Okay, we are now streaming live on YouTube.
Ready to go, everyone?
Yep.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the July/August MAPC Executive Committee meeting. As always, I'm happy to have you all here. As a reminder, this meeting, because it's virtual, is now streaming live and in syndication on YouTube. So I just want to make everyone aware of that. And with that, I am going to call roll for virtual meetings. As you know, it is roll call only. And apologies again if I butcher your name. I appreciate you all, and it's unintended. Okay, here we go. Sharonda Almeida, sorry.
Here.
John Barrows. Keith Bergman, past president.
Present.
Erin Canfield.
Here.
Adam Chapdelaine.
Here.
Bob Cohen. Mayor Joe Curtatone. George Proakis, are you in for, are you representing Somerville?
I am here as the mayor's alternate, yes.
Great, thank you. Tom Daniel.
Here.
John DePriest.
Here.
Yolanda Greaves.
Here.
Sandra Hackman.
Here.
Mo Handel.
Here.
Jerry Johnson. Tabor Keeley is absent. Hayes Morrison. Steve Olenoff.
Here.
Caitlin Pasafaro.
Here.
Oh, here you are, George. George Proakis. Sorry about that. Jenny Wright.
Here.
Vandana Rao.
Here.
Okay. Sam Seidel.
Here.
Steve Silvera.
Here.
Mary Von Spicer.
Here.
Juan Vega, absent. Elaine Vandana. I meant Elaine White. Go ahead, Elaine, I'm sorry. Totally gave you a different last name. Vanya, Elaine Vanya. All right, and Erin Wortman, me, here. Great. We do have, oh, okay. First up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from June 17th, 2020.
Moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mayor Spicer, second made by, was that you, Vandana?
No, it was me, Yolanda.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're both in the same
Okay.
section over here. Sorry. Second made by Yolanda. Any questions? Great. It's a roll call, so if everyone could unmute while we do the roll for approval of the minutes. I'm only going to do first names, so Sharonda.
Aye.
John is absent. Keith.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Adam.
Aye.
Bob is absent. Mayor Curtatone's absent. Tom Daniel.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Priest.
Aye.
Yolanda.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Mo.
Aye.
Jared's absent. Tabor's absent. Hayes absent. Steve Olenoff.
Aye.
Caitlin Pasafaro.
Aye.
George.
Aye.
Jenny.
Aye.
Vandana.
Aye.
Sam.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Mayor Spicer.
Aye.
Juan is absent. Elaine. And Erin, aye. Great. Motion passes. Thank you so much. Getting one. So next up on the agenda is the report of the treasurer. Sam?
Hi, hello to all of you. I hope everybody's doing well and having a good summer. Here is the report of the treasurer. This month, we're looking at the May income statement, which gets us towards the end of FY20 and also a couple of months into COVID time. And the overall report is good. The main number that we keep track of more than anything else is the overhead rate. We want to make sure that we're in line with what we thought we would be and what we said we would be. And if you look at the overhead rate for the May income statement, you'll see it's 116%. Our direct labor costs were down, but also our administrative expenses were down. And that is in part due to some light usage of COVID-related leave. Overall, that's good for the month of May. And if you look out to the cumulative for the year, we're at 118%, which is what we committed to reaching. So in that sense, we're looking very good. I've had a chance to talk briefly with Sheila, and she and I and Rebecca and the team will discuss more over the course of the summer. But we think when we close out the books for June, which are still open and will remain open for a little while, that 118% looks like we'll end up, which is what we committed to do. We have a small amount of net income, which is impressive given the challenges we faced. We like that. We're below what we budgeted, but that's okay. We will live with that. Without any further comment, any questions or comments or thoughts? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
Make a motion to accept.
And I make
John?
a motion to second.
And the second came from, sorry,
Yolanda.
Yolanda. Okay. And then Aaron, I think I hand this back to you. Well, any discussion and then a vote.
Yep. So seeing no discussion, we're going to vote. Here we go, everyone. Roll call again to approve the treasurer's report. Sharonda?
Aye.
John's absent. Keith?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
Bob is absent. Mayor's absent. Tom Daniel?
Aye.
John DePriest?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
Sandra?
Aye.
Mo?
Aye.
Jared Tabor Hayes is absent. Steve Olenoff?
Aye.
Caitlin?
Aye.
George Proakis?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Vandana?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Mayor Spicer?
Aye.
Juan is absent. Elaine? I don't know if she got back on yet. And Erin? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. And thank you, Sam, for a very pleasant report. Next up on the agenda is the report of the Executive Director, Mark. Take it away.
Morning, everyone. Last month, I gave you a pretty detailed report on the work of individual departments, and I summarized that in my remarks. Today, I'm going to focus on a narrower list of things. We're not doing a written executive director's report this month. The next one will be when we meet in September, and that will basically cover the summer. I do want to note, and we're going to cover COVID-related and legislative matters a little further down. I'm going to ask Rebecca to take primary responsibility for the COVID-related matters. I'll chime in as needed. And Lizzie and of course Keith will take primary responsibility for legislative. Those two things, those two buckets are the biggest buckets of what we've all been working on over the course of the past several weeks, and especially now with the legislature being in what appears to be its last week of the session, although we're not actually sure that that's going to be the case. So I'm going to speak about a few of the other related things. We have been very actively engaged on the question of police violence and police reform, not only from a legislative perspective, but also from other perspectives as well. We have been working with our mayors and managers on all questions regarding not just state legislative issues, but local issues to try and address this issue, to fairly incorporate all voices in this very controversial series of questions, to recognize that the issues relate not only to law enforcement, but that there are much broader questions of racial equity that every community is dealing with, and that the region is dealing with as a whole. A lot of our staff have been involved in individual conversations with cities and towns, and a lot of our staff have been involved in trying to discern from city and town leaders the areas of assistance and technical support that they need to to take local action, and also their recommendations regarding legislative actions on the state or federal level, particularly, of course, on the state level. I might note that in our Economic Development Department, Raul Gonzalez has been leading an effort to establish the Racial Equity Municipal Action Program, which will be both a training, planning, and action program for individual cities and towns. We expect, in fact, Raul and Betsy are on a call now with our partners at the Fed and the Government Alliance on Race and Equity regarding the design parameters of that program. And we will be hosting a webinar on that program on August 6th. Could not quite make it. It was supposed to be, I think, for today or tomorrow, but we could not quite make that. So about a week ago, we pushed it off to August 6th. I have one funder meeting on that program now scheduled for August 14th. And we feel it will be an important effort to try and drill down on some of these issues with individual municipalities. Unfortunately, because of funding limitations, we are only able in this first round to accept 3 to 5 municipalities, but our goal is to continue to fundraise for it and to see if many additional communities can be involved in future years. So I wanted to make sure to cover at least some of those issues. In developing the work plan, which has been a big activity in the month of July, because individual departments are developing their work plans, we've asked people to focus particularly on issues that will advance racial equity in the region and on issues that respond to COVID. And by respond to COVID, we mean not only help to address the crisis, but to prepare for the possibility, we all hope it doesn't come, but we must be prepared for the possibility of another surge in infections, and also to try and deal with reopening and recovery across all of those lines. And every department has been trying to evaluate its current programs to see if there are ways in which it can be better across all of these issues, and also trying to devise new programs and projects that can try and either deal with COVID response or with issues of racial equity. So that has been a big focus for every department head and for all the division leaders and many of the staff throughout the agency. At the same time, I want to note that we've been conducting staff reviews. That process has been slightly shortened and truncated because of the fact that we're all remote, but the reviews are going forward as usual. We pride ourselves at MAPC in conducting reviews on an annual basis, and including in those reviews not only an analysis of what's been accomplished in the last year, but also establishing goals for each staff person for the next year and professional development opportunities for that staff person. That's all part of the review process. This year, even though we were not able to offer raises on the 1st of July, we decided to move ahead with the review process. And I want to thank all of my directors and their staffs for working so aggressively on that process, taking it very seriously and trying to deal with it throughout the agency. And it's a little more difficult and challenging at this time, like so many things are. We have onboarded a number of new staff. I think the total is now 3 people and several interns, and we are doing that at this point only remotely. Hiring has slowed down. That's been intentional. Rebecca and I are still thinking about a few additional positions that we may advertise over the course of the next month or so. But I want to thank finance and human resources, particularly, for figuring out the ways to onboard people successfully, even in a remote setting. That was actually a big topic of conversation when I met with my colleagues from other what we call major metros, the large regional agencies throughout the country, about 3 dozen of us from the biggest city regions. We meet during the COVID crisis every Monday at 3:30. And a big topic this time was not only reopening plans, but also onboarding during the crisis. And we are way ahead of many other people in figuring out how to do that, both from a technical perspective, but also, and this is very important, from finding new and different ways to keep in touch with those staff and integrate them despite the lack of a physical presence. A lot of this, the psychological work, honestly, is as important as the technical work. It is not easy to come on board as a new staff person, any new job during COVID, and during a time when we're not regularly in our office. And so that requires special attention. And Holly and her new staff, Natalie, have really been working on that, and I think we are way ahead in that area. So I'm going to pause there now, and I think the next item is COVID response, but Erin, I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thank you, Mark. Let me see. Okay, next, you're right. The next thing on the agenda is update to COVID-19 response activities. Is that Rebecca? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I will take that. I think, just one thing I would add that I'm sure Mark had on his list is we did have a really successful event. We released our diversity deficit report, which is a Metro Common report led by our research team looking at the diversity of the municipal workforce. Thank you to Adam and Mayor Spicer for both participating in that panel. We had, I think, close to 200 municipal officials and public participating, and I just thought it was a really fabulous conversation. I would actually encourage any of you to watch it. I was very proud of both the work and I think really the kind of really thoughtful conversation that we all were able to participate in. So in terms of COVID response, a few things that are happening. One, we are kind of both focused on, response and thinking about recovery. And on the recovery front, I'm not sure whether we've announced this or not here, so apologize if I repeated, but there are two grant opportunities that we've been working on. One is we were successful in securing $400,000 from EDA to support our work on recovery in the region. So very excited to get that quick grant turned around and that funding available to help us do that work. Additionally, Betsy Cowan's team pulled together a 23 community regional application to CDBG to work with micro enterprises and do that small business support. And we were successfully funded with, I think, close to $4 million for that grant program, more for that grant program. And it was just, I think, a tremendous testament to some of our non-entitlement communities to kind of who haven't necessarily been able to access CDBG programs before to all come together, work together. The town of Ashland ended up being the lead community. And these are not contiguous communities, but I think it'll be a really interesting model to think about continued small business support throughout the entire region. So we were very excited to see that grant program funded. Additionally, some of the work that we have been looking at is, as we move through different parts of the year, thinking about how COVID affects, things we hadn't thought of before. So one of the things our clean energy, public health, and municipal collaboration teams have been working a lot on is thinking about how are we dealing with extreme heat in the time of COVID. And we have been working with the Barr Foundation and the Mystic River Watershed Association to convene a quick task force of community-based organizations and municipalities over the last 2 months to think about how do we deal with this kind of combination impact of, COVID really limiting the opportunity to use some traditional methods we've had in terms of accessing cooling centers, libraries, senior centers, movie theaters, malls. And what do we, do about that? We were very lucky or generous. The Barr Foundation turned around in record time a $350,000 grant to MAPC, specifically focused on two areas. One, really trying to focus on communities that had been hard hit by COVID and had an extreme kind of heat burden or heat island effect. We came up with 7 communities that would be eligible for that grant funding to think about some quick on the ground pieces, whether it be, distribution of air conditioners, helping with utility bills, thinking about outdoor cooling opportunities, misting tents, shadings near food pantries, and that grant opportunity is on the street. And we're hoping to turn around that money very quickly. And then additionally, some funding to continue communications and policy work throughout the year into next year to think about, how can we better be situated to deal with extreme heat? What are the supports we need? And, potential policy changes to things like the LIHEAP program or the utility efficiency program. How can we really increase weatherization so that we can start dealing with the issue in the long term? So those are 3 new type initiatives that we're working on. We continue, Lizzie and her team, to do all of the coordinating work, with cities and towns and with the administration. We have our call with the Lieutenant Governor again today on Friday, really touching on everything, contact tracing, testing, school opening. I think we're now really trying to pivot and also focus on, how can we have a coordinated voice around dealing with college reopening and also thinking about, as Mark said, the possibility that we might have to move back a phase or think about targeted shutdowns. So that work also continues.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Any questions on those updates? Yes, Mark.
They're just adding two quick
comments.
things to what Rebecca said. First, on the CDBG grant, yes, I want to acknowledge that Yolanda and the town of Ashland were the lead on that grant. I also want to indicate that we've had some difficulty actually getting the money released. And I want to be clear that that is not DHCD's fault or the state's fault. I've actually discussed that as well on the national call, and they've indicated that yes, this is a nationwide issue with a lot of states that have sort of finalized this question now, being told by HUD that they have to wait for additional guidance before they can release the money. And we are trying to work that to the best of our ability with HUD. And I know that the Commonwealth is working on it as well. I'm sure it's just, I don't think there's any Machiavellian political problem here. I just think it's a bureaucratic question, and my hope is within the next couple of weeks we will be able to overcome it. I also wanted to remind people that I think it's called the Urgent COVID Transportation Program, which I always feel is like a particularly horrible name, is up and underway. I think about a dozen communities and regional transit agencies have been approved for funding. A lot of those checks have already gone out. The rest are going out. And that includes several folks on the phone and here in the Zoom meeting, and other communities that have applied as well. I've been particularly heartened by the degree to which the regional transit agencies have given us really good applications, good strong applications for that program, because that means it can cover multiple communities, which is great. I want to thank Eric Barassa and his team for that work.
Great. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments for Rebecca or Mark or anyone? Great. Next up is the report of the Legislative Committee, which I'm sure Keith and Lizzie will share how bored they've been, right? Totally nothing going on the last week. Keith, your legislative chair, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. I'd be glad to start off. The Legislative Committee met on July 15th, and on a couple of matters, we then reported in to the officers at your meeting, I believe on July 20, which are what's on agenda item 6A regarding eviction legislation and police violence issues. So the Legislative Committee unanimously voted to recommend action proposed by the staff. We brought that forward to the officers, and you took your action under emergency procedures. And so I think we're reporting in to the Executive Committee, and I would defer to whichever to Lizzie or who's on the call to tell us more.
Great, thank you, Keith. Yeah, it has been busy. The only thing about it that's really nice is that it actually feels normal, because it's usually very, very busy this time of year. So it's sort of, our team is sort of, we're used to this. The part that we're not used to is the Zoom part, but yeah. So as Keith indicated, Legislative Committee took positions on two bills that were moving very quickly, largely because we're getting close to the end of the session. And because we knew that the legislature was going to act on them in advance of actually bringing them back to this body, we ended up using the emergency procedure to go to the officers to talk through them. So I'm going to just touch briefly on what those are. So the first was actually around legislation that would extend the eviction and foreclosure moratorium. The reason this legislation was moving so quickly, and a lot of our advocacy allies and partners were pushing it, was because the governor had the opportunity to extend the first eviction and foreclosure moratorium, but he had to act by August 18th, and some communities were kind of weighing in that evictions were already happening in advance of that deadline. The governor has since exercised his right to extend the first eviction and foreclosure moratorium, but we did end up taking a position in support of extending that first moratorium, adding in some additional protections for landlords, which were not as robustly considered in the first bill, and then creating an opportunity to set up a timetable that would allow additional protections for renters to sort of mirror the benefits that property owners have to push their payments towards the end of their term. And so that was actually what we weighed in with to the legislature, that those were our recommendations. And we also actually in the legislative committee, we had a good conversation and added in an additional recommendation to also allow for more mediation between, particularly again, between renters and their landlords. So we have weighed in with the legislature on that piece. It does not seem like it is currently moving because the governor has since extended the existing eviction and foreclosure moratorium. But we have a position on it, and it is not going to be the last time that we need to weigh in on this. So it's good that we sort of have an existing position. The next piece of legislation that we took through our emergency procedures, I'm actually going to turn to Diego for, because he has done a lot of work on the police reform legislation. And I believe he's on because we were texting. Yep, there he is. So Diego, if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving an overview about where we landed as an agency and sort of where the House and the Senate are. So that's bleeding a little bit into the 6B item on the agenda.
Sure. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon at this point. So really quickly, the governor early June, I want to say, released his version of kind of a police and law enforcement accountability. And then the Senate actually took it up next, and they really didn't. They kind of just scrapped what the governor's proposal was, and got a lot of flack for not being transparent. So when they did send it over to the House kind of extended their debate longer than usual. And they had like virtual hearings. They had a account set up for people to submit testimony, which again the Senate didn't necessarily do as openly. So last week, I should say earlier this week, the House and the Senate finally decided who the conference committee members were. So again, the conference committee is really going to have to reconcile the differences between the House and the Senate versions of the bill, with the hope again of all that being done before Friday at midnight. I'll kind of just go over the priorities that a lot of the municipalities in their pledge kind of identified in terms of state policy, and then I'll kind of explain what's actually in the bill regarding the House and Senate just really quickly. So the first piece is municipalities had kind of identified that the civil service system is something that needed to be reformed, and obviously that's an important piece in terms of recruiting, hiring, promoting law enforcement officers. The Senate doesn't really talk. The Senate bill does not talk about civil service at all. The House version of the bill creates a commission to study how to reform civil service exams and that whole procedure. So that's I think one piece that we really weighed in and are supportive of. The second priority that the municipalities, and again part of this pledge, identified as state action was regarding arbitration and bargaining. Again, the Senate version of the bill does not address that piece. The House, in the same commission that they create to study civil service, does include bargaining and arbitration policies as one of the items that they will look at and then eventually make recommendations on. And again, the reason this issue got brought up was, and I'll get to the certification process in a bit, but if a police officer is decertified, and found to have done something wrong, current arbitration and bargaining policies are really ambiguous as to whether or not you can just fire that officer, or if they have to remain on the force and still be paid even if they are decertified. The third piece that was a state priority was to provide municipalities with funding to hold racial equity and bias trainings, obviously not just for law enforcement, but for municipal workforces. The Senate does create funds, but they're more for behavioral health and more for recidivism and not so much for municipalities. In the House side, they don't really talk about that. We did file an amendment in the House with Representative Sicolo, who all of you know really well, but unfortunately that didn't make it into the final bill. And then really quickly, like there were pieces regarding the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus priorities. So certification of officers, and again, both the House and the Senate do create different bodies. They're named differently, but for the most part are really similar in terms of certifying, standardizing, credentialing police or law enforcement. The civil service exam was something that the caucus wanted to bring up. Again, kind of already talked about that. Commissions on structural racism. Again, the House and Senate both kind of tackle it differently, different commissions, different names. It's not like one commission on structural racism, which is what I think we would have liked, but there are pieces in there. And the last piece is, clear statutory limits on police use of force. Again, both bills address that with some nuance, in there. And then I promise the last piece is the last priority that municipalities wanted to push for at the state level was to create an independent body to investigate or prosecute officers that have been involved with police abuse of power or violence or death. I think the House version is definitely stronger. It creates a new division within the Attorney General's office that specifically is required to look into these cases if an officer is decertified. And in fact, in the House version, the body that does the certification of officers has to refer that case to the Attorney General's office, which is a piece that we had been advocating for. So I know that's a lot. The one big piece I'll just throw out there is on qualified immunity. It's not something that I'm an expert on. I will just say that it's something that we are monitoring because it is unclear whether or not the changes to qualified immunity are just for law enforcement or if they apply to any public or municipal official. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I think, why don't we just pause there for a second? There's still a lot that's happening in the legislature that we want to update folks on, but since those were the places where we actually have weighed in and taken a position using our emergency procedures, we just want to see if there are any questions.
Sandra, did you have a question?
I just have a quick question about why the Senate is more cautious on some of these than the House, which is usually their roles are reversed. Just if you, I don't know if there's anything you want to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that I think like Governor Perry has always, especially this week, has kind of been joking about like those same narratives and same labels. I would just say though that out of the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus, there is only one senator, and and I think it's maybe 11 others, maybe 12 are in the House. So it is really nice that the House did seriously consider a lot of the recommendations that the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus made. And I also will say that the House did go after the Senate. So they kind of got to see some of the stuff that did play out. I don't know that that's an excuse or a reason for why the bills came out the way they did, but that's what I would say.
The only thing that I would add is, and it's all accurate, is first of all, don't always trust the labels. We see a lot of back and forth on this stuff, and it's not really possible to say that like one branch is more progressive with a capital P than the other branch. It goes back and forth on a lot of issues. Remember that a little bit outside of a lot of the public dialogue about police violence is the fact that these are labor issues. A lot of them are labor and worker and collective bargaining issues. And that is an area where the Senate has a lot of advocates and where the House leadership is a little less formally focused on some of those questions currently. So that sometimes mediates also as a kind of a lens through which a lot of legislators see this going forward. All that having been said, although I do think the House bill came out a bit more progressive this particular time around, it was a very, very hard debate. It was an emotional debate. I think honestly, it's good the session is ending because it left a lot of scars. And even though the bill is a strong one, it was amazing the degree to which some of the amendments that would have further curtailed police powers and done more to try and address police violence went down by very large numbers. And I know that many of the progressive legislators and many of the legislators of color feel deeply burned by that, despite the overall quality of the bill. This is all the kind of thing which I think, with the benefit of reflection, people will come to sort of understand both sides of that question, I hope, and find ways of working together on it, because we are going to need more legislation on this issue next year. And the worst thing that could happen, I think, is for everybody to pass this bill and then say, we're done, that's it. Let's wait 10 years and see how this works. We're not going to make advance on arbitration. We're not going to make advance on civil service substantially in this session. That's going to be for next session. So we're going to have to keep our eye on the ball and keep everybody talking to each other.
Great. Any other questions before Lizzie keeps going with the other topics that we have?
Great.
Great.
You guys know where to find me. So here's what's happening in the State House right now. Just actually sort of as a first matter of business, one of the things that the legislature did yesterday was that they very quickly moved an interim budget that carries us through until October. There had been some conversation, and I can also just let folks know, we knew that a short-term budget was again moving in the building. I did not know that it would go through October. We have also heard that the governor is working closely with the legislature to actually come out with full year FY21 local aid numbers, and that everything I've seen in the news is that announcement should be coming, quote, imminently. I don't know what that means. I think the legislature had been kind of going back and forth as to whether or not they were going to take up a more robust budget, a longer term budget. I think with all of the conversations that are happening at the federal level about where Congress may be, it makes sense that they actually funded through October, but they actually added clauses that they don't usually add into the budget, which actually reserves the right to make budget adjustments based on what happens at the federal level. And I think those could be up or down adjustments, which they usually have the right to do, but they were explicit that this was about how the state might actually incorporate federal dollars. So that's sort of where things stand on the budget right now. Other things that are moving. So right now, the Senate is taking up the economic development bill. This is a bill that we usually take up every 2 years at the end of the legislative session. It is often what we refer to as a Christmas tree, so a place where we hang all of our most preferred ornaments in terms of policy legislation that haven't moved during the course of the legislative session. This economic development bill is a little different because I think the legislature is rightly viewing it as sort of their first chance at a recovery type bill. And so there are some authorizations in this version of the economic development bill, which we've never seen before. One of those is actually one that we're pushing very hard. It would create a new municipal planning grant authorization. The governor actually proposed to fund it at $5 million. It got up to $10 million in the House, and the Senate actually took it out. I don't know why, but we filed an amendment, and we've been having lots of good conversations with senators and folks in the Senate President's Office and Senate Ways and Means about adding it back in. At the very least, it will be a conferenceable item. One of the other pieces that has been up all session long that is now included inside the economic development bill conversation is around housing choices. So the governor filed housing choices as a standalone bill, but then when he filed the economic development bill in the early part of this year, pre-COVID, he included housing choices inside the economic development bill. The language was originally taken out by House bonding, but when the bill went actually up for consideration before the entire House yesterday, the language was included. So we've been doing a lot of advocacy. It's been, very late nights and very early morning, and lots of conversations with our advocacy allies about how we can push housing choices across the finish line inside this economic development bill. Strategically, one of the nice things about the fact that Housing Choices is kind of living inside the Economic Development Bill is that there are a number of other authorizations that are included in that bill that help to complement Housing Choices. So one of the biggest criticisms about Housing Choices is that it doesn't go far enough. That's particularly true on affordable housing development. But again, there are a number of authorizations inside the Economic Development Bond that actually, coupled with Housing Choices, can help advance a number of these priorities simultaneously. The House debated Housing Choices yesterday. It took a long time to get through. They had like over 300 amendments. Senate is taking it up today. The Senate, interestingly, released their version of the Economic Development Bill. It's like a procedural complication that I've never seen before, but released their version of the bill before the House had finished debating and calendared it for debate today. They did not include Housing Choices in the Senate version of the bill, but an amendment was filed by Senator Creighton, who has long been the champion of this legislation in the building in the Senate, that would actually include the Housing Choices provision, and then some of the additional provisions that a number of us had worked on for a while. So the senator basically filed the housing production bill that CHAPA has prioritized. We have weighed in with the Senate to indicate our support for Housing Choices. Senator Tran also filed an amendment to add Housing Choices back into the bill, but it would just be a clean Housing Choices bill with none of those additions. And so we will be weighing in to say that we support the addition of Housing Choices and a number of these other authorizations inside the Economic Development Bill that we think would make it easier to do more housing production across our region. There are a number of other provisions that are being included inside the Economic Development Bill. And again, a number of tenants' rights groups and housing advocacy groups are pushing for these pieces. So those would include the eviction ceiling bill, on which MAPC has taken a position, and the right to counsel bill. And this would be a pilot program that would that's being championed mostly by Senator DiDomenico, that would allow, if somebody has faced an eviction largely due to COVID, that we would do a pilot program that would give them a right to counsel. And again, as a reminder, this is a place where MAPC has taken a position as well. There are a number of other provisions inside the Economic Development Bill. It is a pretty long bill in both branches. And I expect it will be something of a complicated conference committee, but hopefully one that they can get across the finish line by Friday. I'm gonna turn to Diego first, because I want to see if there are other big authorizations that we should let this group know about, if there are other pieces that you wanted to identify. And then I'm sure Mark or Rebecca might have some things to add about this bill as well. Okay, we're good. All right.
You covered it all.
Okay, Rebecca, it looks like, yeah.
Yeah, I would only add as a consideration for all of you that, you know, when we get off the phone or the Zoom together today, it is still there's still opportunity to weigh in on these issues. And you know, both Housing Choices and the municipal planning authorization, while we all understand their importance, might not necessarily be the type of amendments that are really driving a ton of phone calls. And so I do think, you know, you weighing in with your legislators and senators expressing your support really could go a long way. Where, you know, I think having this funding and actually getting Housing Choices accomplished would be a huge accomplishment for the end of the session. And I just encourage all of you to do that when we get off the phone or the Zoom.
Even a little more self-serving than Rebecca was. No more passionate housing advocate than I am, but I think what's going to happen on Housing Choices in the Senate is probably pretty much set. I think they've got an amendment that majority seem to agree with. I wouldn't expect too much to change on that. And it's an issue that I think most senators know about. The municipal and regional planning grant line item, that's a new program that the governor proposed. The House funded it. And now the Senate is taking it up as an amendment. I think it's Amendment 54. Have I got that right, Diego?
Yeah.
Boy, am I good. Okay. Amendment 54 by Senator Joe Boncore. And it would be enormously helpful if after this call, you contacted your senator's office and indicated support for municipal and regional planning grants. Remember, we don't know its district local technical assistance is going to be in the budget in fiscal 21. We hope it is, but we don't know. And especially with the interim budget that's been, that Lizzie described, this could all take longer to know than we hope. So getting this planning grant program off the ground is really critical, and enabling our municipalities to try and address some of the, what I call the avalanche of planning needs that has occurred as a result of COVID, where all of a sudden the tiny planning staff has to do everything from creating isolation facilities to repurposing sidewalks and streets for outdoor dining to figuring out how to keep senior citizens cool without cooling centers. So there's just a huge amount of planning work. And these grants would be available to both cities and towns and to regional agencies. So that's the call I would make.
Excellent. I have two other updates very quickly. One of the other bills that's a major priority for MAPC is the transportation bond bill, which is also in conference now. So the House passed their version of the transportation bond just before everything shut down. The Senate passed their version of the transportation bond. I think it was just last Monday, but it feels like it was a year ago, but it was just, I'm pretty sure it was just last Monday. So one of the biggest issues that, again, if you're picking up the phone and calling your legislators, one other thing that I'd add to the list is that once again, we are in a position where the House has passed the value capture provision and the Senate has passed the regional ballot initiatives provision. There have been some unfortunate statements in the press, including by Chairman Strauss, who is on the conference committee, indicating that the regional ballot initiatives provision is either not supported by businesses or really would create an inequitable situation. For the very first time ever, the Retailers Association came out against the regional ballot provision. And actually, I know because so many of you liked my tweet thread about it that many of you actually saw my personal perspectives on John Hurst's position about this. But we would encourage you to weigh in with legislators and ask them to support both of those provisions. I think one of the things that's really important about authorizing local options to invest in transportation right now is that I think it is that kind of authorization that will actually make it easier for Massachusetts to take advantage of federal dollars, because 41 states already have the opportunity to raise local money for transportation. And so, if we have an opportunity to see some kind of federal stimulus dollars in the next calendar year, Massachusetts just won't have the same leg up and the ability to make local contributions to transportation investments. So the last piece that I just want to put out there is actually a victory. It's a bill that we've worked on all session. We have taken a position on it as an agency, and it's the breakfast after the bell legislation. This bill actually made it across the finish line. It had unanimous support in the House and the Senate. As a reminder, it would allow it would require districts that have, I think it's 50% of their students on free and reduced lunch actually be eligible to have breakfast in their classroom with their peers after the bell. It's one of those little engine that could bills that's like near and dear to my heart. Diego did a ton of work on it with our advocacy allies in the public health community. So just wanted to let everyone know that we actually did get one victory that we're excited about for this session. So far, it's going to be a busy next couple days, so we'll see some other pieces as well. I think that's actually it.
One more.
Doesn't seem right.
Oh wait, Leah, yes, I'm sorry. I meant to turn it to you, your camera was off. Yep,
No,
Leah.
it's fine. Literally, as we've been on this call, the House has released a climate bill, and it's very exciting. They're using the bones of what the Senate did back in January, 6 months ago. It feels like 6 years ago. Their next generation climate bill, and they are including within it parts of Rhett Moschino's roadmap bill that we've endorsed. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in a conference committee, but hopefully we will actually get to a conference committee on a climate bill, which did not seem possible a week ago. So hopefully more there. There's also a focus on minority-owned businesses doing clean energy work, which is really exciting too. So more to come.
Leah, I have a question for Leah, since that's news to me as we've been on the Zoom. Is there an amendment deadline on that?
Yeah, 5 p.m. today. So we're working with Rep. Govea to file some of our building code language as an amendment and a couple other things as well. That's pretty quick. They're hoping to take it up tomorrow.
Well, that is breaking news. As the saying goes, if you wait until the last minute, it can only take a minute. So, all right, let's do that. Anyone have questions about it's like literally any topic you can think of: housing, energy, mobility, transportation, business.
I was gonna say, I'm glad we don't do any insurance work. Otherwise, the healthcare
Well,
financing bill would be crazy.
Well, there's still time. Session doesn't
True.
end yet, so.
I mean, I say that out
How
loud.
about that idea, Diego? I must have left you off that email. I'm sorry.
Okay, any questions? Sandra?
So on the municipal and regional planning grant, curious, so the governor is responding to just the need to plan around COVID? I mean, it just seems unusual that he would come up with that, but I don't know.
So
actually, that was included in the governor's version of the bill at the outset, and I think we have long pushed for additional programs to add more planning dollars. Again, the ED bill is like a really good place for this, and there have been other municipal and regional grant programs in the past that the administration has pushed. I think this is really this session's iteration of those other programs, much like the efficiency and regionalization grants. They've moved away from that completely. I think this was kind of moving towards that effort.
And yeah, just a reminder. So the line item that existed and that we're pushing for is 10 million, but obviously it's a 5-year bond. So everybody. Right.
It's only 2 years. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Okay, great. Thank you, Lizzie, Leah, Diego, et al., Keith, for such a robust update. And thank you so much for all your hard work, particularly in the sprint to the end and all the work to come in the next 3.5 days, 2 days, 3, whatever it is, till Friday and then beyond. Yes, Mark.
Yeah, I do want to add just one thing, which came up in a conversation this morning with one mayor and one senator, which is that, Lizzie pointed out I think it was Lizzie who pointed out we may be seeing something on local aid soon. And the indications that I have, and I don't know if it's actually going to come to be the case, is they may actually level fund or commit to level funding Chapter 70, which would be great. It wasn't what we were all hoping for with the Promise Act, but it also isn't cuts. And of course, many communities are very heavily dependent upon Chapter 70. The item, if that happens, and I wouldn't consider it a done deal yet, but if it happens, then I think that the two things we're going to have to watch out for is what that means for other local aid, because that other local aid is important to a lot of communities, and also what's going to happen to the vast portion of the state budget that is essentially social services. Because if there are no increases in revenue, nobody seems to be really open to increases in revenue at the moment, even though they probably should be, then you've got to take the money from somewhere. And I think that's going to be the trade-off question that we're dealing with. No easy decisions for the legislature or the governor on this question. But I think that's a little bit of what we might be looking at over the course of the next week or so.
Great, thank you, Mark. All right. Oh, Keith, go ahead. Sorry.
I just had one point. Could staff, first off, thank you so much to Lizzie and all staff, Leah, Diego. It's a very hardworking group. We're very happy to have them. Could you send us any updated information on legislation and among others, so that there are things that we can do today to help? We'll get on it. So thanks so much.
Yes, happy to. I just wrote into the chat sort of the 3 asks that we flagged today. As Leah speed reads the climate piece, we can also follow up with some information there. And we're happy to share copies of our letters in case it's helpful, or memos so that you have talking points just at your fingertips.
Awesome. Thank you. Sound good, Keith?
Yep, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Okay, next up on the agenda is Metro Common 2050. I see Eric and Lizzie here. Welcome, guys. I don't know who is going to do the update, but take it away.
Thank you. We will teamwork the update. Both of us will talk a little bit. And I know there's so much pressing news today. It's a really big day. So we're really evening things out by coming to talk to you about 2050. So we have a short presentation just for all the visual learners out there on my screen. And we have a few updates for you. We wanted to talk a little bit about what's happened this year, what to expect in the next 11 months, because the plan is targeted to be done in June 2021. And then we'll go into some of the events that we've held recently and what we've been hearing from the public, as well as some other key pieces of policy and research that we're doing. But I promise we'll keep it to 10 minutes. So feel free to type questions in the chat as I go if you have any for me. So looking at our last year, the last 6 months or 7 months, some of the key things I just wanted to highlight. Lizzie Wyant and her team finalized our policy table of contents back in February. In January, we had our municipal CEO breakfast. In March, we talked about how we'll pivot given COVID-19. And then the past 3 months have really been focused on the work that we're doing around each of the 5 action areas. So we've released research overview briefs for 3 of the 5 action areas, and we've hosted workshops on those 3 to hear from our stakeholders and sector leaders whether we are on the right track. So over the next 6 months, we will be doing more outreach around the action areas and collecting ideas around the challenges and opportunities in all 5 action areas. And just as a reminder, those 5 action areas are climate change, adaptation and mitigation, inclusive growth and mobility, homes for everyone, equity of wealth and health, and dynamic and representative government. So we'll keep getting feedback on those. Our policy writers internally will keep writing and drafting, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then as we kind of finish up the last 6 or 7 months of the plan, we'll be doing a lot of outreach, doing surveys, having focus groups, talking with municipal leaders, and also engaging with many populations that are traditionally underrepresented in planning through our Metro Common mini grants program. So we'll be hosting presentations and focus groups through those. As we finish up, we will come back to you in June of 2021 to present the plan to you, hopefully for your approval. And we will launch it at that point after running it through our external advisory committee, our staff, our council, and our community engagement advisory committee. So just to give you a little update on the events that we've held over the past month or two, we've held 3 sets of action area workshops on climate change, inclusive growth and mobility, and homes for everyone. And these were really focused on asking folks who are working in the field already where we should be intervening in the next 10 to 30 years to solve these regional issues, and what some of the major challenges and opportunities will be to achieving our Metro Common goals. So I just wanted to call out some of the things we heard at the workshop. In general, there was alignment with our views that we presented through our action area briefs. And folks at the workshops were definitely interested in naming actors that the recommendations would be attributed to, and also for advocating for more holistic changes, since we do have this 30-year time horizon. So some of the things that came up across all 3 action areas as barriers were things like our existing zoning, home rule, a lack of inclusive decision-making processes, obviously what we're experiencing with COVID-19 and its impacts on our economy and our housing, and some of the existing funding structures. But on the more positive side, some things that our workshop participants called out as opportunities were this shift towards working from home, the grassroots neighborhood level solutions we're seeing like mutual aid, and this appetite that we're seeing at the state and federal level to take action on economic and housing issues. And then just to get a little more granular, when we spoke in the climate workshop with folks, some of the things they called out that they'd like us to focus on in the plan are recommendations around reducing car dependency, addressing unaffordable living, addressing inadequate transit and bike opportunities, and the mismatch between where jobs are and where affordable housing is. So our next steps, we will follow up with phone calls, focus groups, and surveys to get a broader representation and more broader input from folks who didn't make it to the workshops on those 3 action areas. And then we're hosting another set of workshops in late August on our last 2 action areas, dynamic and representative government and equity of health and wealth, focused on the same things, the challenges and opportunities, as well as where we should be intervening in the next 10 to 30 years. And I'll just say that a lot of what we're hearing at the workshops lines up nicely with the policy work that Lizzie and a number of MAPC staff are working on writing right now. So it's always nice to hear that alignment. And I will hand it over to Eric to talk a little bit more in detail about some of the work that's going on.
Thanks, Lizzie. Hello, everybody. Just wanted to provide a little update on where things are at with the policy work. And again, Lizzie Wyant and Kasha Hart are really leading this effort up. One, we have 20 different policy topic areas that will be part of the plan's recommendations. And again, most of these policies are really targeted over a shorter term time frame, really between, say, 5 to 10 year time horizon. One of the unique in particular policy elements that we're working on is municipal and regional finance. This was an area where we don't have a ton of really deep expertise at the agency. So we actually ended up going out and hiring the Collins Center at UMass Boston to be a research partner on this. They are tasked with developing basically an assessment of where things are at over both the present over to the long term, the 30-year outlook in terms of issues with regional and municipal finance. And we've asked them to really break this work up into, or apply 3 lenses, looking at the sufficiency of revenues, the sustainability of revenues, and the equity of revenues. And on equity, looking really at a couple different things. One is equity between communities. Obviously, within our region, we have a wide variety of different community types that have different financial outlooks and strengths and weaknesses, and also equity in terms of expenditures and how they impact different populations. They will provide, after that assessment, should be delivered in late September, early October, a first cut of possible policy interventions and solutions. And again, we're really challenging them to look at some big structural issues, everything from Prop 2.5 to new ideas, really borrowing best practices from around the country and even around the world that we might be able to implement in metropolitan Boston. Just the last thing I'll say about on this topic is, back during the Great Recession, the legislature granted a number of different new revenue tools to cities and towns through local options, things like meals taxes and hotel taxes. Obviously, these kind of tools are targeted to the sectors that are being most impacted under the COVID pandemic. So I think moving forward, we're going to have to think about different types of tools in order to make sure we have the revenues we need to reach the goals for the plan. Next. The policy agenda. So this is one of the foundational elements of the policy work. Cohort 1 is actually already have already drafted their first drafts of the policy topics. It's going through internal review over the month of August. And then starting in the fall, we'll move out towards public engagement around these. The second cohort, which is actually the largest, has just gotten underway in July and are working on their set of policy drafts. And then we're working with community engagement to make sure that really a major activity throughout the rest of the plan will be engaging and vetting and going out to both stakeholders at the municipal level, state level, nonprofits, and also working through our mini grant program to work with underrepresented populations to make sure that those who are likely to be most impacted by policies have a strong role in shaping them. Next. And the next couple slides just are a preview or reminder of the policy topic areas that we're working on. This is the first cohort. Really some exciting ideas being developed here. And I think one of the big challenges that we're hearing from the policy writers is, we've asked them to structure this through trying to get down to no more than 3 strategies under each topic area with actions, discrete action steps with actors underneath. And some of these are pretty broad, so it is a major challenge to figure out where are those most important strategies. And I think that's one of the major areas that the policy writers are working on and we'll be looking for feedback on. Next is cohort 2. This group just got underway this summer, already making good progress. But again, here's the list of what the topics are. Give you just a quick second to read through this. And then the last cohort is the smallest, but not the least important. Looking at chronic diseases, obviously a huge issue today with all we're going through, especially on the health inequity side. And then the last one is looking at public realm design, cultural and historical development and preservation. So we're looking forward to coming back to you to get your takes on the policy recommendations, and we'll be starting that process up in the fall. Next. That's what we have for you. Thank you, and if folks have any questions, we'll be happy to try to answer them.
Great, and Eric, if you want to call, or Lizzie, if you want to call on anyone, oh, now I see everyone, you can feel free to do so.
If I could, Aaron, I wonder if anyone participated in any of the action area segments. As Lizzie indicated, we've done, I think, 6. We're hoping to do 4 more. And if anyone has any responses or suggestions moving forward. If you don't, that's fine, but I want to be open to that. Well, that could mean one of 2 things. Either you love the action area presentations or you didn't participate. So,
Jenny raised her hand.
Jenny raised her hand. Okay,
Yeah,
Jenny.
I was just going to say I helped with the housing, discussions, and I thought that they were very, interesting in terms of like the small group conversations and then sort of the understanding of the material as well as some really interesting new ideas. That was what I experienced. So it'll be interesting to see how that formulates into policy and strategies for municipalities. A lot of it seemed really high level. That was what I experienced. It was sort of local, but a lot of the thoughts and ideas seem to be a lot more about state policy and even federal policy and finance and all kinds of things like that. So it'll be very interesting to see how this all shapes up.
I think there is what I only went to 2 of them, but what I saw also was, it is always a struggle to try and bridge the high level discussions and turn them into actual policy recommendations. And I know that that's something that Lizzie and Eric and also Lizzie and Kasha and everyone working on the policy recommendations is struggling to do. We want the policy recommendations to really reflect some of the larger scale conversations and priorities that are set by the people who participate. At the same time, policy recommendations need to be, they need to be actionable. They need to have enough detail in them to be actionable. So I think bridging that divide is a struggle. I would urge members of the executive committee to participate in these action area discussions and other discussions as they happen. These things will all eventually come to you for a vote. So it all works a lot better if you're actually engaged in the conversations, so that when we bring it to you, when we bring you a 30-year plan, you don't feel like it's the first time you're engaging in that conversation. For the newer members, I would note that the executive committee last year approved the goals. That set of goals and sub-goals, which is very comprehensive in and of itself, is a big deal for the plan. That was a very important accomplishment. And the policy recommendations will be another big accomplishment over the course of the next year. Lizzie and Eric, both Lizzies, and Eric have been doing a tremendous amount of work on all of this, very good work, hard during COVID, but they've retooled their mechanisms, as you saw in the presentation, and really trying to make it work. So I want to thank them tremendously for that effort.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Great, I just want to echo Mark's comments. Thank you, Eric, Lizzie, and Lizzie, but particularly Lizzie and Eric for kind of managing and keeping this process going. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to more conversation on it. So thank you. Great. So next up on the agenda, I know some people are popping off, and I appreciate those who had, obligations at 12:30 or 12:15 to still come to the meeting at 11:30. I know it's hard to juggle everything, but I really do appreciate that. So next up on the agenda, if everyone could take out, I almost said take out your agenda, like your calendars. If you could mark down the next executive committee meeting is going to be Wednesday, September 16th. Labor Day is a bit later this year. So our executive committee meeting, although it is not impacted necessarily because we typically do the third week of the month, I just want to kind of note that for everyone to kind of make sure they keep that space in whatever way we're functioning at that point. And if there are no questions on that, so next up is the executive director's annual review and negotiation of contract. So we're going to do a few steps here. First, it's more procedural, but we need to have a formal vote. So even though it is a responsibility of the officers at MAPC to meet with the executive director annually and to talk about job performance, and then every 3 years to talk about an employment agreement, we need to formally vote on that as a group, as an executive committee. So at this point, I'm looking for a motion to, Keith?
I would like to make the motion that you are about to describe.
Request?
I'll
great.
second it.
All right, guys, I'm coming up. So as I heard, Keith, you motioned to delegate to the officers to perform the executive director's annual review and to negotiate a new contract. And John DePriest, you seconded, correct?
Correct.
All right, great. It is a roll call, so let's get ready for some fun, everyone. Okay, here we go. With the motion on the floor, I know some people have left, so I'm just going to kind of scoot through it, okay? Sharonda, she left. John?
Yes.
Keith?
Aye.
Karen, I think, has gone for real. Adam had to leave. Bob is not here. Mayor Curtatone is not here. Tom Daniel?
Aye.
John DePriest?
Yes.
Yolanda, I think, had to hop off. Sandra? Mo, I saw your mouth moving. Mo,
Aye.
great. Jared Tabor Hayes is not here. Steve Olenoff?
Aye.
Caitlin?
Aye.
George Proakis? I see your mouth moving. It's fine. Jenny?
Aye.
Aye.
Vandana?
Aye.
Great. Sam?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Mayor Spicer? Juan is no longer, is absent. Elaine?
I can vote, yes.
Oh, okay. Abstain, Elaine. And Erin, me, I vote yay. So that unanimously passes. Thank you, Executive Committee, for giving the officers the authority to perform the annual review and to engage in conversation for a new contract. Mark, I'm gonna kind of update the group now. Is that?
He's not here.
That would be fine. It's really entirely up to you. Yes.
Okay, great. So everyone, I want to kind of give a quick officers update. The officers and Mark have met a few times over COVID, which was incredibly interesting. I've never, and I don't think any of us have ever done a contract conversation virtually. But MAP staff was amazing, giving us executive session breakout rooms and popping us back in the meeting. I really, really appreciate all the technical support. It was not easy in that respect, but in the other respect, it was very easy because Mark makes it really easy to have an annual review for people who have not been an officer before. We ask Mark by March every year to supply the officers with like a self-evaluation or a self-reflection. He did that. We take a few weeks to review it. We meet to discuss it. So when we do contract conversations, it's a two-step approach. So the first step is we talk about his performance, what's going on, what has been done, and obviously it was glowing. And then once that evaluation is done, then we start talking about the contract. The officers and Mark met, and we have agreed on the terms of his contract for the next contract cycle. Is there anything, Mark, you'd like to add? I tried to be brief.
No, I don't necessarily want to add anything. I was checking to see if that was circulated, and I actually am a little concerned that it was not.
It was not. So I talked to Keith about that. So Keith and I actually had a conversation, and it hasn't been circulated previously.
It's up to you. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, fundamentally changed. It is not fundamentally changed from the past. So.
Yeah, I don't want to give any spoilers or anything. It is almost exactly the same as the last contract and the contract before that, and probably the contract before that.
Probably David Soul's contract, yes.
It is very standard, obviously, language. I will say that when we started the contract conversation, it obviously had to pivot a bit because COVID, and we did kind of pause at one point because we wanted to make sure the financial health of the organization was consistent with what we were agreeing on, proposing, and Mark is was very generous with the conversation in the contract conversation. And I know that I can speak for the officers in saying that we felt very comfortable with the outcome. How's that sound? Does anyone have any questions?
And I might note, Aaron, if you want any of this conversation to occur either without staff and also without me, you have only to ask us, and we'll proceed. It won't be an executive session, but we don't have to be on it, including me.
I'm not sure if anyone wants to say anything or not. I'm sure you wouldn't mind complimentary feedback in person on camera, Mark, but
not necessary.
Well, we think you do a great job. Yep, Keith is given the clap. We think you do a great job. The officers are very shared our thoughts with you, and we've really enjoyed working with you, and we look forward to working with you even more. So we want to thank you. Yes, let's do the emotion reaction. Thank you, Mark, for doing that. And from I'm trying to get my agenda up. All right, I don't think we need to do anything else, correct, Mark? When it comes to that, the executive committee gave us authorization. We are reporting back.
Yes, the authorization. Somebody else? No. If the authorization included to negotiate and conclude a contract, then no other action is needed, but to report back.
Okay. Keith and John, that's how the motion was, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Thank you. And thank you.
I agree.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. So I'm thrilled that that motion included both steps. So thank you for doing that. I reported out. If there is no comments or feedback at this time, we can move to the next agenda item. Oh, yes, Mo, sorry.
Personally, I'd like to thank Mark for his service and glad that he's likely to be here another 3 years.
Sorry, I was straining there, Mo, because your audio was a little bit problematic, but yes, I think you said that I would be here for the next 13 years. Did I hear that correctly? I will. Yes, I will. I'm hoping, my mother would say, God willing, to be here for the next 3 years. And, you know, I can't even begin to say what an honor it is for me to work with all of you, and most particularly what an honor it is for me to work with my deputy director, Rebecca, and with all of my staff. I have to be honest, it's a little less pleasant being physically separated all the time. I will admit to finding this a real challenge, emotionally as well as physically, but in some ways it makes the work even more important and more meaningful. And I'm ready to keep it going. It's what I love to do.
Great. I'm seeing physical thumbs ups from different people, so thank you. Yeah, we don't have to use the fun reaction button. So thank you all for that. So the next item on the agenda is other business not known to at the time of this posting. Mark, do we have anything else, or Heidi? Awesome, I love that. So here is one of my favorite motions of a meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mo to adjourn and second made by, was that John DePriest?
It was.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And because we are on the web, it's a roll call time. So everyone unmute for 1 minute for me. So Sharonda left, John left, Keith.
Aye.
All right, Karen Canfield, I think left, Adam left, Bob, Mayor, Tom Daniel,
Aye.
John DePriest,
Aye.
Yolanda left, Sandra,
Aye.
Mo, Jared Tabor Hayes is not here, Steve Olenoff,
Aye.
Caitlin,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Jenny,
Aye.
Vandana, Sam,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Mayor Spicer, Juan wasn't here, Elaine,
Aye.
and Erin is me. Aye. Thank you so much, everyone. That motion passes. The meeting is adjourned at 12:55. And congratulations again for everyone for keeping us on task and on time. So I hope everyone stays cool, and good luck this week in the legislature, everyone.
Thanks, Erin.
Have a good one.